Joining us, New York Times D.C. correspondent who covers the Justice Department, Glenn Thrush, and former top official at the DOJ and MS Now legal analyst Andrew Weissmann, who we're so happy to have back on this show. Glenn, this was a pretty big deal. By the way, we have, Andrew's new book, Liar's Kingdom, How to Stop Trump's Deceit and Save America. We're going to talk about the book more in just a moment, which is part of the reason why we have you on for so much time today. But, Glenn, let's talk about what's happening right now at DOJ. This meeting between Todd Blanche and Republican senators did not go well. Should we be surprised?
I think Todd Blanche was surprised. He shouldn't have been, but it's my general sense that, Blanche is so focused on taking the acting out of his acting attorney general title that I think he thought it was going to be no big deal. I think the White House and the Justice Department, by implication, seem to think that the Senate will remain eternally quiescent. But Blanche, remember, is a former SDNY prosecutor for years, defense lawyer, and a Trump defense lawyer, and he hasn't really had any experience working in Washington, D.C. So his entire notion of the way that the system works is Article 2, the President of the United States dictates something and everyone listens. I think what he's now encountering is a Senate majority, an endangered Senate majority in the Senate that is having to deal not only with Trump's enormously unpopular domestic and foreign agenda, his sinking poll numbers, but also the president's obliviousness to their own political survival. He just keeps jamming things on them. So Blanche really walked into an ambush. And I think what he's starting to really understand are the implications of not saying no or even pushing back in any significant way from these maximalist demands by the president and the people around him.
Did the idea for this fund come from? NBC News had some reporting that Ed Martin was overheard a couple months ago talking about how the January 6ers were eventually going to get paid.
We're working on a piece on this right now, and I'll just sort of say it's a hybrid number of places. This has been really in the ether for a long time. Chad Mizell, Pam Bondi's first chief of staff, was actually tasked with managing the quote unquote January 6th community. The aforementioned Ed Martin, who was an attorney for some of the Jan 6 defendants, has been pushing that for a long time. He's I think floated the idea of using his office, which is the pardons office, as a way to sort of screen potential claims. But I think in general what this was two exigencies colliding. Trump had filed this astounding $10 billion lawsuit that against the IRS that his own department had to defend against. So it was a closed system. And the judge in that case appeared disinclined to go for it. The case might have been tossed out. So Trump needed some exit strategy. And I think these plans were sitting around to avoid the lawyers at the Department of Justice having to pay their boss hundreds of millions of dollars, which I think would have been politically catastrophic.
On the Hill the other day, when Todd Blanche was speaking with senators, he got an earful from Senator Van Hollen. And Van Hollen said he was acting in his personal capacity as Donald Trump's personal attorney. And Blanche recoiled at that and said, no, I'm the acting attorney general. Can you ever, Andrew, be the acting attorney general and not Donald Trump's personal attorney if you once served as Donald Trump's personal attorney? Can you actually separate those two things out?
You can, although one thing to remember is that if you have been a lawyer for somebody, even if that representation's over, you have a continuing duty of loyalty to that client. I've been a defense lawyer for all of the people who I represented. I have a continuing duty. So that is a reason why it's so inappropriate for Todd Blanche to actually be handling this matter. But whether you sort of think he's acting in one way or the other, the real thing is, what is substantively he doing? And what has he done here? Is it in the public interest? And there, I would say that the federal judge who was overseeing the sort of bogus tax case, the $10 billion case that Glenn was talking about, raised that exact issue, which was that Donald Trump is on both sides of this and that she did not see the Department of Justice representing the public. In other words, what is the public's interest here? And, you know, this is one where there were so many good defenses, including that this case was what's called time barred. In other words, Donald Trump didn't bring it on time. That the idea that there's now going to be a, $1.776 billion payout for a claim that should have been zero. And so that is one where it's very hard to see that and then look at the Todd Blanche actions, and whether he was his defense lawyer or not, he is taking actions that are not in the public interest.
Is it taxable, this money? Democrats want to institute a tax that says any money that gets paid out from this fund will be taxed 100%. Is that a way to claw back this cash?
Well, there's two things. Not only would the money that's paid out, but there are tax professionals who are already weighing in, saying that the $1.776 billion, which is, remember, styled as a settlement payment. That's the reason for the fund, is this fig leaf that it's a settlement. Well, if that's the fig leaf, that is taxable to Donald Trump. The fact that he does not receive the money, as these authorities say, these professionals, is irrelevant. He just decides, I'm going to use the money in a certain way. But the fact that it's coming to him as a settlement would make it taxable not just to the people who then get payouts, but to Donald Trump himself.
But what if Donald Trump doesn't want to pay that cash? Does he get audited by this IRS under the settlement agreement that also is included in this decision by Todd Blanche?
Well, so there was a one-page addendum that came out late that has gotten a lot of attention, because that is essentially saying that there is civil immunity for Donald Trump, his sons, and his companies. I personally don't think that is going to hold up and be worth the paper it's printed on, because that's just, there's such collusion there, because there were not two real parties here. As Donald Trump himself said when he brought this case, the $10 billion case, he said, I know it seems odd because I'm on both sides of this case. So the general release that he has given himself, I don't think will hold up. But right now, on paper, you have the Department of Justice saying that all audits, past or future, are stopped as part of this general release. In other words, he has given himself sort of a civil pardon. Remember, the pardon power only relates to criminal cases. So what the Department of Justice has done is given him a civil pardon. But that is something that a court can claw back.
Yeah, one that could potentially save him $100 million, according to New York Times analysis.